In this unit, we are exploring what it means to be a Christian and the different things that involves. Now, in our last session, we began to understand what it involves to be a Christian and what this actually means to us. And we explored the way that Jesus shows us the example. He shows us the way, and he does this by focusing on two of the commandments. He focuses on the idea of the Lord our God is the one Lord, and we must love the Lord our God with all our heart and with all our soul, with all our mind and with all our strength. And then the second rule was, you must love your neighbour as yourself. And in today's session, we're going to focus on that second commandment that Jesus explained was so important, that you must love your neighbour as yourself, as we try and answer the question of how does Jesus teach us to help others. Now, Jesus tells us a story that really helps us to understand how we can love our neighbours. One day, Jesus was asked to explain what we had to do in order to get to heaven. And Jesus replied that we have to love God and love our neighbour, those two commandments that we looked at last week. Then he was asked, but who is my neighbour? And Jesus replied with a story. A man was once on his way down from Jerusalem to Jericho, when he fell into the hands of robbers. They took everything he had, beat him up, and then made off, leaving him lying there half dead. The poor man lay there at the side of the road, not knowing what was going to happen to him, when suddenly he spotted a priest who happened to be travelling down that very same road. Now the priest spotted the man, but when he saw him, instead of helping, he put his head down and carried on to the other, walking on the other side of the road as if he'd not seen. A while later, another man appeared on the road, a Levite. Now this is a man who helped the priests in the temple, a man who had God on his side, who lived that very existence that Jesus talks about. However, when he saw the stricken man on the side of the road, he too passed on the other side of the road as if he'd never seen him, leaving the man lying there, battered, beaten, ready to die. A little while later, a third person appeared on the road, and just as the stricken man started calling for help, he realised that this wasn't just any normal person. This was a Samaritan, and of course Samaritans and Jewish people despised one another, and he knew that if the priest and the Levite had both walked on as if they'd seen nothing, people who followed the example of God, and a Samaritan would do absolutely nothing. However, when he saw the man, he was moved with pity, and he ran towards him and bandaged his wounds, pouring oil and wine on them. He then lifted him onto his very own donkey and carried him to the next inn. When he arrived there, he told the innkeeper to take care of this man, and the next day he took out 2 denarii, enough money to pay for, and handed them to the innkeeper and told him, look after him, and on my way back I will make good any extra expense that you have. Once Jesus had finished telling this story, he asked the people, which of these 3 do you think proved himself a neighbour to the man who fell into the robber's hands? And of course they all replied, the one who took pity on him. And Jesus said to him, go and do the same yourself. This was the story of the Good Samaritan. Now in this session there's going to be 4 activities. The first one that I'm going to ask you to do is to list 5 things that the Good Samaritan did to help the man who was attacked. So think about the story, think about those 5 of those things that the man did to help him. The second question is, sometimes people say we should be like Good Samaritans. What do you think this actually means, thinking about what Jesus has talked about with this story? And the third thing is, I want you to think about, is it easy for Christians to follow the example set in this parable? And why do you think this? Don't just think about what the Good Samaritan does, but think about what the priest and the Levite does as well, to help answer that question of whether you think it's always going to be easy for Christians to follow this example. And then for the fourth activity, I want you to retell this story, this parable of the Good Samaritan, and I want you to tell it in any way that you want. So this could be written as a story, this could be written as a newspaper report, this could be done as a comic strip, this could be done as a poem. So choose however you want to do it, and answering those first three questions, the 5 things the Good Samaritan did to help the man who was attacked, what you think it means when people tell us that we should be Good Samaritans, and whether you think it's easy or not for Christians to follow the example set in this parable. Then retell that story, that parable of the Good Samaritan, in the way that you want. And I look forward to seeing your work.